You're listening to the Loudmouth Radio Network. No matter the time or the season, we're open and available 24/7. Shouldn't your dealership be too? Carumba.com, the convenient online used vehicle marketplace. Register your independent dealership now. I'm pretty excited about today's topic. As you guys know, I always try to find things that are going on around me. Things maybe I might be studying, reading, subliminal messages. Sometimes just things come to you and they're forms of inspiration. And I think that it's important that sometimes you recognize that the universe is putting things in front of you. We have this amazing gift as humans to project things in our minds. And most times when we're not conscious of it, we're already putting those things into existence or bringing a manifestation or some type of symbolism or some shape and form of maybe what we've thought about or glimpsed about. So for me, I'm actively week to week, day to day, thinking about different subject matter, conversations I may have had, maybe something that's come across and made me go, I think that's a great conversation to have. And if you know anything about the platform of Loudmouth Radio Network and Loudmouth as a brand, I have these three segmented core values or foundations that I like to thrive with. And it depends on if it's our creative medium of TV, radio, or if it could be some other form of medium. But the basis is always empower, inspire, and influence or possibly entertain or a conjunction of the two. And in this sense, today's conversation, I definitely am going to just thrive right into the subject matter of find what inspires you. I hope y'all ready. It's Sonny's Monday Motivation. Let's go. You're listening to Sonny's Monday Motivation here on loudmouthradio.com. Okay, I think that by now we are already all aware we are in the month of February, and it's a significant aspect of time for African Americans to recognize Black History Month. So let me just start off with saying that this is a wonderful time to be alive because we get to have this time period to spotlight, talk about, bring subjective matters of Black history and things of that nature into different forms of conversation, whether it's on social media or on podcasts, on radio, or on television, if it's in verticals of writing or blog sites. So pretty much at this point, we're 5-6 days into February. So by now, you've probably seen some Black History posts or something that has been made mention of. Most times when we think about history, we think about, people who are either our elders who have maybe done things before us and have left some significant trail of something substantial that has left the mark in some form or fashion. We think about people maybe who have passed on and are now considered our ancestors. But I think that it's also important that we remember that history is made moment to moment, second to second, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. You get it. And that does not exclude the factor that things that are influencing us, things that are happening, great things that are happening can also come from our youth. So today I want to talk about, which I said in the intro of the statement of today's conversation, is find what inspires you. And I like to say this, that for me, I'm just going to say for me prospectively, that I've come to become so much more aware of things around me. And because I am actively producing radio segments and shows and preparing with 10 years into this thing as a radio network. And so there's all these elements that are circling around me constantly. And the biggest thing that I always try to do is to be open to things that I think could provoke a wonderful conversation, because the truth of the matter is, I know that this particular show is more of a dialogue for me, that consists of things that are affecting me or surrounding me or impacting me. So I get to talk about them. You get to listen to them. We're not having a back and forth conversation on this segment. So most times I'm looking at things, I've thought about them, brainstormed them, considered them, maybe read about it, meditated over it, and if it makes enough of an impact on me, I'm going to talk about it. And so ironically enough, I know of an incredible young man that is actively pursuing a career in dance and in the arts, just overall in the arts. But the dance is the biggest part of his medium. It's the camera and fights. And he's a 15-year-old based out of the Los Angeles area, pursuing his love and his choice of performance of art in the form of dance, acting. He's such a well-rounded young man, and I've had the ability to bear witness to some points of his life as of late over the last few years, and watching his growth and in his physicality and his within his talent, watching his admiration of something that he enjoys. And recognizing how important it is to him, and watching him pursue it and actively do it. And, most times people are drawn to people because they see something about them that makes them think about themselves, or there's something that is symbolic or resonates with you. And what was so important to me on this subjective matter, and in this moment talking about Black history, and I'm gonna tie all of this together for you, is that our youth, we're in a time period where our baby boomers are the abundance of population. Most of these baby boomers age brackets, our parents, could be grandparents, could be aunts, could be uncles, but there's a plethora of our generation that is actively phasing and going through transitional changes of magnitude, right? And you have your range from there all the way out to our younger people, millennials and Gen X's, and and so we have these time periods in which we actively think about how things have gone on in our lives. You saw things that happened in your youth that now you're watching people that were at your age as a teenager making their mark, right? And so I think it's important that we recognize our youth in their realm and what they're doing, and also for them to know and understand that what you're actively doing is creating history too, right? So I'm choosing to speak about Cameron today because of some wonderful opportunities that he is doing. And one, he's proactively a part of Debbie Allen's Dance Academy, which is based out of Los Angeles. He's also pursuing some additional programs, and he's been a part of Alvin Ailey. He's done some amazing things where he's gotten television coverage. Just a rising star. You can see it, And I think the best part is that being able to bear witness to his confidence growing. And, I can remember for myself, being at that age and younger, and just navigating the world. And from a very young age, I recognized that I had a love and a knack for sports. I loved to read. I was into acting. I would do a one-man show in a drop of a hat. So I had these realms that were within me, that most times if you came across me, you saw basketball in my hand, or I was doing something to entertain you. So it's just always been there, right? But at that youthful age, when you're just starting to see things and you're recognizing there are things that you like and enjoy, and you start leaning into it more. Cameron, I'm going to share his active fundraiser and opportunity of a program that he's looking to partake in over the summer. And he actually posted an incredible testimony of his own journey and his own walk, and it touched me very much. And it also definitely it hit home, and it reminded me of being in the crossroads as a youth and pursuing something that I know that was just bigger than me and greater than me, but not understanding the magnitude of it. I was just wanting to do what I enjoy doing, so I actively did it every day. But in my mind, I had already developed this attitude that this is something that I want to see myself continue to keep doing, and that I want to make a career of it. I knew that basketball was my love, and I knew that every Chicago Bulls game came on, I was glued to the television, whether it was in the kitchen while I was cooking, cleaning, or I was in my bedroom watching it, or watching games and soaking it in, and in my young mind at that time saying, well, I guess I'll be one of the first females to play in the NBA, because there was no men's and women's NBA teams. There was no NBA league for women at that time. So you find yourself methodically, arranging things that you feel would be a point of a destination or something that's a dream of yours, and you may position it accordingly, because based at that moment in time, this is what you see and what's presented in front of you. So a lot of times when you're a person that has foresight and you're a dreamer, or a person who actively believes in forecasting what they desire, you may be doing something that's not even physically there yet. But you just know that you're committed enough, or you want it enough, or you desire it enough, that you want it for yourself far beyond the moment in time that you're in. And so reading Cameron's testimonial yesterday, when he posted his decision to ask for those who may not know his story to first know his journey in this process, to also share his own challenges and his own struggle with the factor of being maybe intimidated by something that he knew he liked and enjoyed, but he wasn't as good as he felt like he could be at the time, and stepping back from it and feeling intimidated about it, because he did find or see other people that may have physically may not have had as many challenges as he did pursuing something, or the natural order of things. I can remember when I was playing college basketball and I got an opportunity. I had not gave up my eligibility in college yet, as far as academia. And as a student athlete, I hadn't gave up my eligibility to continue to play college basketball, but I actively was pursuing playing professionally. And I just knew that, at that time, I was very much aware that most women's opportunities were only heavily presented to go overseas. But then something happened. Into my junior year, this basketball league comes about, the American Basketball League, which was called the ABL. And at the time, I want to say there was maybe 20 teams or something like that. They were in major cities. Chicago had a team. I think Kansas City is where I went. Cleveland, Columbus, Ohio, which was a team that I would eventually line up with. So they were scattered, but the ABL had strong women basketball players, right? So some great players. I remember my friend telling me about this league as it was coming out. And people like Yolanda Griffith, who's from Chicago, she ended up eventually leaving college and going into that league and playing overseas. There was an abundance of professional and collegiate student athlete women who were actively pursuing the next level, right? And of course, if you got an opportunity to play in a major basketball league that's a professional league, and the ABL came out very aggressive. They were following NBA rules. So they had 4-quarter regulations. I want to say that they were starting off like $20,000 to $40,000 on range, which at that time was substantial, especially if you weren't an elite player like the Lisa Leslie's, the Cheryl Swoops, and those, Dawn Staley, those girls that were, in the Olympics. And so the ABL was pulling traction, right? So I get this opportunity to go and participate in a tryout for the Columbus Quest, which was the ABL League team. The year that I actually got that opportunity and that invite, the ABL had probably been going at least a season, and the Columbus Quest, which at the time was at the helm of Coach Brian Agler, and the team had won their championship, and they were returning for the new season. And here it is, this opportunity arises itself. So I absolutely wanted to do it. And I can recall, I'm a student athlete. I'm in college. And as a student athlete, a lot of times it's difficult to work regular jobs and go to school and be committed to the sport. And, even though I did it, right? So I'm juggling work, I'm juggling school, and work. I'm proactively training, planning, keeping myself in shape. And I get this invite. The deal is I have to get myself there. I have to have my lodging. I have to deal with whatever incidentals that will require me to be able to be there over the time period of the stay. So they did house us in a campus. So I do remember that we had the housing set up through a campus, but we actively had to have all these budgetal things, right? So one of my very good friends, Juanita, connects me with another young lady who just so happens to take interest in my quest. And right now my mind just said bloop. I can't think of her first name. It just escaped me just then. It'll come back to me. But long story short, she was a sister of a NBA player who was actively playing in the league. And I'd never known her. We had never met. So I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm actively a SCAD. And I get this opportunity to get this, to take this trip. And so she puts some things together and puts me with this person. And this one person drafts a letter for me. And when I tell you guys, I can remember it fresh at this moment. Her writing a letter, sending it to government officials, politicians, presidents of small businesses, some corporate realm. Like literally, she actively went on this quest for me, and I couldn't even begin to put it into words. And so she had my letter of my invitation. She had my stats. She had put together this whole package to present me. This was way before GoFundMe, Kickstarter, Indiegogo. This was old school, right? So she drafts these wonderful letters. She has them on her letterhead, and she puts it all together, and she's actively sending it out. And she put together so much for me in such a very quick time, because I did not have a whole lot of time to get all of this together, but I knew I wanted to go. I knew I had to be there. And so she put all of this stuff together. She drafts this letter, and she starts bringing in funds. People are donating to my cause. And I remember this as clearly as day. It's left such a lasting and wonderful impression on me. But so I had to get a ticket for the flight to go. And I end up having to catch a flight out of Jacksonville, which is like an hour and 45 minutes from Savannah. So she does this amazing thing and gets me a car, a black Lincoln Town car, to drive me from Savannah down to Jacksonville to catch my flight. And guys, when I tell you, I felt like a star, like a full out supported star. And, I just couldn't believe that somebody took so much effort for little me, And I was so grateful that people could see my own drive and inspiration and dreams and ambitions and desires to move to something that I had been proactively doing for over, at that time, 14, 15 years. And I'm like, at this point, 18, 19 years old, maybe 20, somewhere in that age bracket. So this had been more than half of my life that I dedicated to this thing. And so when I read Cameron's testimony and just knowing some of his journey over the last few years and watching him progress, it touched me in such a way. And I thought, how amazing his art is, and his ability to to give all of himself into the form of dance. And for him to have enough courage to share the vulnerability of feeling like he wasn't enough at one point and actively walked away from it and just kind of quit and kind of gave in to the pressure of what he put himself through and didn't think that he was good enough. And guys, when I tell you, and I'm going to make sure I put the link to his dance his dance fund that he's working towards for the summer. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get catch my words. But I'm going to put his link of his GoFundMe actively into this actual broadcast detail information so you can see it, because he does have an amazing video there for you to see. And you can physically see this young man and see where he's come from. And to see it at this point, which is still very early on, but you can see such a magnificent growth and his shape of his form, his body, his just everything. And you can see the dedication, which with anybody, it would inspire me to lean in more of what inspires me. You know, that in itself is such an inspiration to see another person take the steps necessary to pursue their dreams. And so I think that we're in a day and age where as people, we can be so busy and we can get caught up in ourselves so much that we forget about other people, and we forget about just as much as you want this, just as much as you want that. There's other people walking the same walk in their evolution. We're all in our own evolution, and nobody's here to walk the evolution but ourselves. That's the wonderful thing about free will and what God has naturally given us to explore. And so here's this young man that is making amazing history. I got a chance to see him perform at Debbie Allen. Got a chance to meet Debbie Allen, somebody I've adored for, oh my God, as a youth, as a little person watching Fame and watching her produce and dance and age just timelessly. And to know that she's planting a seed and giving to these children and people's futures, right? As well as these other programs, Alonzo Lines and Alvin Ailey, and so these are people. This is our active history that's passing the torch, right? Alvin Ailey's with the ancestors. Debbie Allen is still here with us. Thank you, God. Right? There's so many different people who have done amazing things that are giving transformation to others' lives. And so I just think it's so important that we recognize the importance of connecting to what inspires you. I don't care what it is. You could want to be a pen maker, right? You can want to create something. Maybe you have a passion for inventing something, or you want to patent something. You don't know what it is, but you just want to be a creative being that creates something that changes the scope of the world, or contributes to mankind, or contributes to the arts, or contributes to the engineering world, or something in tech. So I'm just so grateful to bear witness to people, places, and things that are doing things that are inspiring others, that are empowering themselves and being an inspiration to others, which it then influences the world. So you guys know that is a homage to my book. But this is exactly why I titled it as such, because it is actively what I hope that even for myself and for others, that they will find what inspires them. And it's not one thing. I'm not saying that you guys got to just have one thing. It could be many things. But that's what keeps us alive. That's what keeps us vibrant. That's what keeps us relevant to ourselves and keeps us interested in things. It helps us to forego depression. It helps us to overcome anxieties sometimes, even though it may be anxiety to approach it. But once you tap into it, you just blow away like you never felt like there was anything to be pensive about. So guys, when I tell you, it is so important that we recognize the level in which our youth and young adults exist today, because it's different for these young people than it was for us. It was different for us than it was for our parents. It was different for our parents, for their parents. So guys, this is a never ending cycle. We will never, ever not be moving in which we don't have full control. But what we do have control over is ourselves and how we map out our level of life. People tend to say, what you're doing today is going to determine whether you go to heaven or hell. Now, I'm just going to actively say this, and it's not really a conversation to evoke beyond, and we could, but I'm going to say this, that if we can recognize that the heaven and hell that we talk about getting to is happening in your now, that you can determine whether or not your life is of hell or if it is of heaven. How are you treating your fellow person? How are you encouraging your fellow person? How are you connecting to your fellow person? Right? How are you connecting to yourself? What are you giving to yourself? What are you providing yourself? What are you encouraging with yourself? Because it does start with us. The secret to many things lies within us. A lot of times the things that we're combing for, trying to figure out and working through, a lot of the times the problem is that we're trying to get the end result when the actual journey is a part of the actual result. And I'm saying that to you guys, Lord knows I am not projecting anything to you that I can't take to say to myself, because when I tell you, that just freed me just to hear myself say that. But literally, we get caught up sometimes. Prime example, how many times have you wanted something, maybe set this goal or set this ambition to do something, and you really got into it? And along the way, you had some trials, some tribulations, some challenges, but then you started having some breakthroughs and some successes, and then you achieved the thing that you set out to do. And then what happens? As soon as that thing is settled, achieved, accomplished, whatever it is, I just had this moment of thought. It makes me think about Forrest Gump running after Jenny broke his heart, and he just took off running. He just kept running, and Forrest was running because he was hurt. He felt lost. He didn't know what to do with himself, and he was so consumed with heartache that the only thing he thought to do was to run. And Forrest just ran. And ran and ran until a point that people started noticing he was running. And his running inspired other people to start running. And so he looked back. One person started following him. Then another person started following him. Then a group of people started following him. And next thing you know, he's running a clear across country with a posse. I mean, he got a whole network behind him. And then one moment, he just got to a point, his feet slowed down with a beard down to past his chest, half the length of his torso. And he just stopped. He said, "I'm tired and I'm going to go home now." And all the people behind him was looking like, "What? We're doing this life-breaking, record-breaking, historic thing for us. What do you mean you tired and you just going to go home and you just stop right in the middle of running while all of us are behind you following you?" Forrest didn't care. He's like, "I'm out of here." And he turned around and just started trotting on back home. And guys, that is like a direct result of how you could be inspired, or you could just be doing something. And sometimes you just get caught up doing something, and maybe the motivating factor of it is not as, or it could be something that's grounding you, but it's inspiring you or is igniting you. And that's okay. And then when it gets to a point, sometimes you might accomplish it, finish it, and then you're like, woo. And then that adrenaline leaves, right? And then you move on to the next thing. That's typically a lot of what happens, right? So in this sense, I mention that because, we'll have things that sometimes we'll be going and running, and we'll do a marathon, or we might do a sprint, or we might just say, that was cool and I won't want to do this anymore. But recognize that you don't want that to be the pattern of your life, right? if you can stay connected to what keeps you inspired, what gives you hope, what gives you ambition, what gives you dreams, what gives you enough oomph to get up out of the bed and do the next thing, lean all the way into it and see it through, see where it goes. And you may surprise yourself. You may discover something new. I remember a friend of ours during COVID started painting. Of course, because people were in their houses trying to figure it out. And she started painting and discovered that she actually had a good knack and actually enjoyed it and loved it. Now she's painting more and more actively. And I can see why she felt like, wow, I didn't even know I could do this. And how many things like that are within us? Probably a whole lot more that you haven't even tapped or touched or turned on yet. So I just wanted to say, one, Cameron, I'm so proud of you. I think you are an amazing young man. And I think you're such a talented artist. And I'm here to be as supportive as I can. I'm always going to cheer you on. And I want to thank you for being an inspiration for this particular show today. And I want you to know that whether you realize it or not, at this moment and at this time, your story is resonating with the world. This podcast, this segment, will be accessible for 24/7 on demand at all times, 365 days out of the year, accessible to anybody that can get to it on their computer, tablet, or phone, right? And that's history. That's this moment being made and being cemented. And so for my listening audience and supporters and those who may have just stumbled upon this today, I hope that this subjective matter, this conversation, and this story, some testimonials of mine and Cameron and so many other people, Forrest Gump, can give you some light of how important it is to find what inspires you. So for me, my story, I did kind of leave y'all in the cliffhanger with that, right? I did make it to the opportunity for the camp. To my surprise, there were over 423 other women invited, a massive turnout, and it was such an amazing experience. It was like a combine to a degree, and we were tested, we were measured, we were trialed, we picked up games, we had an opportunity to meet and mingle with each other, we got an opportunity to observe the talent that was in the room, and I can remember feeling overwhelmed with the factor of, here it is. My mind was like, oh, it probably would be me and maybe 10 to 15 other people. And that went from that mindset of my thoughts to 423 women that turned out. And what was amazing is that out of that moment, I ended up getting a 22, I was ranked number 22 out of those 423 women that were assessed. It was like this full assessment camp, and the ABL was trying to figure out, this team, the Columbus Quest, who was already a 1-year champion, who ended up becoming a 2-year champion before the league folded the following season, that they needed to find people that were inspired to be their best and be their greatest, and they came out believing in themselves enough to support themselves or whomever to get them there, right? And even though what ended up happening, I was placed on a roster for free agency of consideration for this team. Thank God I had not gave up my eligibility, because that December of that year, of the summer, the league folded. And I ended up not having the opportunity to play in the league, but the WNBA continued forward. And all those players primarily were migrated into the WNBA. And it was like the second or third second season of the
Network.
WNBA, very, very premature. It was, I was a part of history. I was a part of a moment in time that most people would want to say that they were even a part of that opportunity. And I was so grateful that opportunity was given to me, and that somebody supported me enough to believe in me, to support my dream and my ambitions. And so I say this to say that I hope that at some point that what we're doing here as a radio network is an inspiration, and that it inspires you enough to go and be something greater than where you are now. So guys, I'm going to end this broadcast and giving you guys love and light. And I appreciate you guys listening. And I ask you actively to support this young man's mission, because I will be putting his link in the actual content of this broadcast. You guys, until next week, go do something amazing. Later. This episode is sponsored by loudmouth.com, the #1 small business online network. We're putting the word out about small business. Put your business on the referral network online that wants to put the word out about you. 30.7 million small businesses in the U.S., creating 1.5 million jobs annually. Small business accounts for 64% of new job creation in the U.S. There's strength in numbers. No matter what we face, know that there's strength in us. Because of you, we're able, we're capable, we're resilient, and we are available, because we are small business, and together we're the economy.